Well, good evening. Nice to see everyone. Welcome. It must be Wednesday, so I keep track of the days. When I'm here, it's Wednesday. Mill Valley Zen. Many of us are doing this 3-month practice period. So we've been studying this piece of writing by Dogen called the Genjo Koan, or the koan of everyday life. Everyday life. We're now a solid, almost the anniversary for me of the 1-year anniversary of the uh, COVID lifestyle. Um, I did get my first vaccine a couple of weeks ago, and getting number 2 next week. Looking forward to that. Um, yeah. Anyhow, Dogen. So tonight's passage is one of my favorite passages of all time from in Dogen's writing, and it's like most things. It's like most of his writing. It's quite poetic and filled with metaphors and meaning, and I think at first I just want to read this passage and just suggest just listening to it and hearing it kind of just as poetry. Just see how it enters how it hits your ear, how it hits your body as poetry, and then we'll go back and kind of go through a bit sentence by sentence and talk some about what I think he may be trying to say here. So here's the passage. When the Dharma has not yet fully penetrated body and mind, one thinks one is already filled with it. When the Dharma fills body and mind, one thinks something is still lacking. For example, when we sail a boat into the ocean beyond sight of land and our eyes scan the horizon in the 4 direction, it simply looks like a circle. No other shape appears. This great ocean, however, is neither round nor square. It has inexhaustible characteristics. To a fish, it looks like a palace. To a heavenly being, a jeweled necklace. To us, as far as our eyes can see, it looks like a circle. All the myriad things are like this. Within the dusty world and beyond, there are innumerable aspects and characteristics. We only see or grasp as far as the power of our eye of study and practice can see. When we listen to the reality of myriad things, we must know that there are inexhaustible characteristics in both ocean and mountains, and there are many other worlds in the 4 directions. This is true not only in the external world, but also right under our feet, or within a single drop of water. And interestingly enough, I just started reading last night. Some of you may be familiar with this book by Adam Grant called Think Again, The Power of Knowing What You Don't Know. And I couldn't help but kind of see some of the connections about the message of this book about the power of knowing what you don't know, and especially the first few lines of Dogen, where he says, when the Dharma has not yet fully penetrated body and mind, one thinks that it has. When the Dharma fills body and mind, one thinks something is lacking, right? So I think what he's saying there is that anytime we think that we've arrived, we haven't. Anytime we think, oh, I've got it. Oh, I'm free. I'm an enlightened being. Now I'm really walking the path, I'm like that's a good sign that that's not it. However, when we're having doubts, when we're like curious and wondering and thinking that something must be missing, this this is good. This is a sign that we're perhaps on the path. And uh, there's a great little cartoon in this book, in Adam Grant's book, where he says, the first frame says, step one is to live your life. Step two is make mistakes. Step three is to learn from the mistakes. Step four is to repeat. And then step five is to realize the wisdom you acquired from these steps is really not wisdom. And then the last step is to repeat this process for the rest of your life. And so it's, I think Dogen and Adam Grant in his book are talking about that this approach to life, and Adam Grant talks a lot about approaching life as a scientist, right? And he I think admonishes against living like a preacher or living like a politician, right? So we don't want to get caught by a particular belief system. We don't want to be stuck in representing our party all the time. It's this this other way of being about often in the Zen world that is talked about, the practice of not knowing, Now, again, even going back to his language, he's using the language of, when the Dharma has not yet fully penetrated, and when the Dharma fills body and mind, one thinks something is missing. So here, what he means by Dharma is the essential wisdom teachings of Zen Buddhism, which include impermanence and selflessness, right? So if you unpack a little bit, so he's saying that because we lack any any particular sense of self, and also that there isn't that time is fluid, so that anything that might be true or that we might know now, we can't depend on now, right? So again, I think these are the kinds of teachings and ways of being that Dogen is referencing when he says, when the Dharma fills our body and mind, one thinks something is still lacking. And then he gives this, I think, beautiful, both poetic and scientific example. When we sail a ship into the ocean beyond the sight of land, it looks like a circle. No other shape appears. This great ocean is neither round nor square. So he's kind of describing how that anything that our senses tell us is partial, right? That we know that the ocean isn't round or square. Our hand, my hand isn't big or large, or it's like it's our the world is pretty hard to pin down, pretty indescribable, and it's and I think he's also pointing us to living our lives with a sense of wonder, particularly in these lines where he says, I, to the great ocean has inexhaustible characteristics. To a fish, it looks like a palace. To a heavenly being, it looks like a jeweled necklace. To as far as our eyes can see, it looks like a circle. Yeah. So again, this kind of imagining, putting himself in the place of a fish and thinking that, that to the fish, the ocean looks like a palace. And I think, he doesn't say it here, but I think he's inferring, to a human being, we, our lives and the air that we see, and we swim in the, in the air of oxygen, and our life to see everything is to see in this way, to drop, to drop being a preacher, to drop being a politician, is to see the jewel, that there are jewels everywhere. No avoiding seeing the wondrousness of our lives. All the myriad things are like this. We only see or grasp as far as the power of our eye of study and practice can see. When we listen to the reality of myriad things, we know there are inexhaustible characteristics in the oceans and the mountains, in our feelings, in our hearts, in our minds. This is true not only in the external world, but right under our feet, or within a single drop of water. Yeah, and I think we know, that that a single drop of water contains millions or billions of organisms. Our bodies and minds. Again, there's this sense of kind of radical appreciation of our selves, of our lives, and of course, what that means, I think, in practice is noticing when we become the preacher or the politician, or noticing how easily we get bored or judgmental or dissatisfied. And so all of these things that Dogen is pointing to here are, aspirational practices. And I think in meditation practice, to be like scientists. And I often think that, that the historical Buddha was in a way very much a scientist, a scientist in almost, again, as like the opposite of a preacher or a politician, but someone who is very precisely, eagerly, wondrously wanting to know what is this? What is this breath? What is this life? What is this jeweled way of being? This jeweled oceanic way of being. When we sail a boat into the ocean beyond sight of land, our eyes scan the horizon in the four directions. The great ocean is neither round nor square. Inexhaustible characteristics. To a fish, it looks like a palace. To a heavenly being, it looks like a jeweled necklace. All myriad things are like this. There are innumerable aspects and characteristics we only can see or grasp as far as the power of our eye of study and practice. So it's interesting here, this kind of, he's, I think, calling to us to, motivating us to increase our study and our practice, and that see that we can only see as far as our practice and study allows us to see, that we are, the way to grow ourselves is to be like this, like a scientist, and to take on a kind of serious study and practice of the way. Yeah. When we listen to the reality of myriad things, we must know that there are inexhaustible characteristics in oceans and mountains. There are many other worlds in the four directions. This is not only true in the external world, but right under our feet in a single drop of water. Well, let's yeah. So again, I just maybe want to repeat the first lines, and then I want to get us into groups. So the very first thing he says, which is what I want to suggest that we talk about, is right, when the Dharma has not yet fully penetrated body and mind, one thinks one is already filled with it. When the Dharma fills body and mind, one thinks something is still lacking. Yeah, so what I want to suggest is that we, maybe tonight we'll see, we'll do twos or threes. In a moment, you'll find yourself with another person. And the suggested topic is, how does any of this strike you, but particularly these first two lines about, when we, when Dharma has filled our body and mind, we think there is something lacking.